indicate that we have another gold partner for this session. Azero has graciously partnered with us to support this session once again. They do have our exhibitor booth that can be accessed through the lobby, so please check them out. And they work on design and implementation of boat wash stations and decontamination stations. So check them out in the exhibitor booth. And with that, I will let Sydney take it away for our aquatic plants session.
Hi, everybody, welcome. Before we get into it, just quick housekeeping. If you could save your questions and submit them in the Q&A feature, then I'll be able to read the questions aloud for each speaker after their presentation. Now, to kick us off, I'm pleased to introduce Summer Weidman. Summer is here from the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. And Summer will be teaching us new techniques for mapping aquatic plants. Over to you, Summer.
Alrighty, thanks, Sydney. Let me do that classic screen share. Let's see, can everybody see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, there we go.
Okay, thanks, Sydney.
Yep.
All right, so yes, my name is Summer Weidman, and I'm going to be talking today about different mapping techniques for aquatic plants and sort of how we've advanced our own techniques over the years. But just before I get started, to introduce myself, so I got my bachelor's in environmental science from Boston University, and then while I was studying in aquatic plants, I fell in love with mapping and GIS, and then I got my master's in GIS from Unity College in Maine, and I'm currently part-time pursuing my PhD in remote sensing at the University of Connecticut in Dr. Chandi Witharana's lab, trying to figure out how to use satellite imagery to identify aquatic plants, which I'll get into. But just to explain where I work and who we are, so we're a state agency down in Connecticut in the northeastern US, and our name is a mouthful, as Sydney already said it once, but it's the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, which is a state agency, and we call it the station, the ag station, CAES, CASE, whatever you got to do to make it take less than 5 minutes to say the whole name. And then I'm part of the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. So the office was started in 2004 as the Invasive Aquatic Plant Program, and then through legislation was officially established as an office in 2022. And our main goal is surveying aquatic vegetation in lakes, ponds, and rivers throughout the state. And this is our team with the lead Greg, and we have Jeremiah Foley and Riley Doherty as well. And together we map aquatic plants throughout Connecticut. And we have, through the legislation, we have a lot of tasks that were established. So we research and survey aquatic plant species. We also advise municipalities on aquatic invasive species management. We serve as a repository for all data related to aquatic plants for the state, and then we're a liaison among organizations and other state agencies. We coordinate with our state's Invasive Plants Council, and then we do a lot of education and outreach, so teaching people how to identify these plants, clean, drain, dry, all of those kinds of things. And I always like to share this quote from Anne Rowe, which is, "Nothing in science has any value to society if it is not communicated." As someone who is really interested in mapping and data visualization, communicating effectively is very important. I need people to look at my maps and get information away from it. So just to set the stage of our state, so while we are relatively tiny state, we do have quite a few infested water bodies. So with this map, all of the blue stars are lakes we've surveyed that do not have any invasive species, and then the red X's are lakes with invasive species present. So we have surveyed 264 lakes, and we have identified 15 different aquatic plant species that are invasive. And then 60% of lakes contain one or more invasive species. So it's over half of the lakes we go to have an invasive species present. So how do we collect our data? And I will be talking about this picture later. This is from the Connecticut River, and this is invasive hydrilla, but it'll come back. So some survey tools, we use typical survey equipment. We have rakes and grapples. We use polarized sunglasses so we can see through the water better. We use the Aquatic and Wetland Plants Guide by Crow and Hellquist to identify any species that we don't know. And then on our boats, we have sonar systems that help tell us where the plants are when we can't see to the bottom, and in deeper waters and really turbid waters. And then we also have an underwater camera, which we don't use all of the time, but we use when we're looking for specific species, and it's hooked up to our laptop on board, so we get live video feed of what's underneath the boat, and we can identify, and we've even attached a hose to it for treatments to treat specific spots for different invasive species. And then for our data collection, to record our data, we use a Bad Elf GNSS system, which gives us our GPS coordinates. And then we have Samsung Galaxy tablets and Surface tablets that we use different Esri software for mapping. So for our species distribution mapping, so each time we go to a lake, we identify all of the native and invasive species that are there aquatic. So we don't do wetland, but we do all of the aquatic species, and we basically just map out where they are. So we used to use paper maps and colored pencils when I first started. This is how we did things. And this map of Quanapug Lake, it's only 100 acres. But there's over 36 species, and that's just too many colored pencils. And you can see that sometimes we had to use little smiley faces to denote a specific species or a heart because we just didn't have enough colors. And then you map this out in the summer, and then in the winter, in the off season, I would upload it to our mapping software and have to figure out which colors meant what and what plants were which, and basically redraw the whole thing. So now we've switched to ArcGIS Pro on our tablet, which is hooked up to our GNSS system, so I can see live in real time where I am in the lake, and each species has its own shapefile that I can draw with our pen. So it's essentially just a digital version of the paper map, but it has made our mapping techniques, it's just much quicker. I can get a map out much faster because I don't have to do two steps. It's now just all in one. I just have to edit, back in the lab. So it's a lot easier. Then for our quantitative data, like our transect points, collection points, water sampling, we used to use TerraSync, which was not very user-friendly. It took a lot to build the system to collect our data, and it's now a cloud-based system. And so the TerraSync that we used to use has been end-of-lifed, so I now don't get any support. So we have switched to our GIS field maps. We use a lot of Esri software with our mapping. It's extremely user-friendly. And we have a Samsung Galaxy tablet that we have field maps on, and it hooks into our GNSS system, and it's not available on Windows. But our ArcGIS Pro is only available on Windows, so we do currently have two tablets that sort of serve two different functions. But once this field maps has the freehand drawing capabilities that Pro does, we'll be able to just combine it all and do everything in field maps on our Galaxy tablets. So right now there's two tablets, but at least we get our data accurately and efficiently. And I will say, if all of this GIS talk is overwhelming for anybody, it's becoming more common for other state agencies throughout the US and just other agencies in general to have GIS offices where those people will help the aquatic biologists build their apps, so you don't have to set up field maps all on your own. There's now a lot more resources, and when you use something like Esri, there's a lot of tutorials, and it basically walks you step by step, so it is not as overwhelming as it may seem. And it's really worth doing because information is just immediately available online instead of dealing with paper and pen and having to transcribe all of your data. So how do we use all this data that we collect? So we create static maps, they're PDFs, and they basically will show all of the native and invasive species similar to how it looks when we're mapping it out, or we'll create other maps for our research that we can use. And These are great. They're really helpful. We use them for management. So if we need to manage, like in this map, the dark green you see is all invasive fanwort, and an applicator can look at this map and figure out where they need to treat. And but one of the issues with it is that we can't really, it's not interactive. So you can't, there's all of these different colors all layered on top of each other. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish one plant from another, similar to all of the colored pencils we used to use. It just gets confusing. But we can use these maps to display change over time. So this is Taunton Lake, which had grass carp introductions, which in Connecticut, these are sterile grass carp that are used for management. You get a permit to use them. They're not allowed everywhere, but in Connecticut, they are used, and they are not the invasive kind that other people are worried about. These are sterile, and basically they're put in to just eat the plants. So Taunton Lake had invasive Eurasian water milfoil, and it had native western waterweed. So on these maps, the bright purple is the native plant, and the dark maroon color is the invasive Eurasian water milfoil. And these fish were introduced in 2013, 2015, and 2016. So you can see from 2009 to 2014, this is before the fish. Well, in 2014, the fish were there, but they were pretty small, but you can see a lot of the native western waterweed, and then you can see that the Eurasian water milfoil starts to grow and take over. And then in 2017, this is a couple years after the fish have been introduced, we've lost all of our native waterweed. So now we pretty much only have the invasive plant, and then in 2019, there's even less of all plants in total, and then in 2022, we barely found anything. So we use these maps to help educate the public on management techniques and how they can be effective, but how sometimes when you introduce grass carp, you lose all your plants. And then my coworker, Riley Doherty, I put her email here because she's really the guru of this thing. This was her project. We have our online web application, which basically is taking all of this data that we've been collecting since 2004 and putting it online. And so she has information on water bodies, what invasives are present in each lake, different lake associations, public access, links to reports that have been written. It's pretty much the central place you can go to for information on lakes in Connecticut. We have all of our survey data. We have some specialty data on the Connecticut River. And we also have a button where you can report invasive species that you have found yourself, whether this is plants or zebra mussels or anything. We have a place for that. So this is a really great app. I encourage you to play around with it in your free time, and reach out to either Riley or myself if you have any questions. And then lastly, so using remote sensing to map hydrilla. Now this is my PhD, and I'm about a year and a half into it, so things are still new. But this is hydrilla, which is an invasive species in the Connecticut River. We have mapped 1,000 acres of it over 2 summers, and now it's been spreading to other water bodies. It's in 10 other lakes throughout the state. It's now in Massachusetts. And why would I use satellite imagery? We know how to survey from a boat. Well, with how quickly hydrilla is spreading, we don't have the resources to continually map with our traditional methods. It just takes too long. It took us over 2 summers just to map the first time. So to do it again is just an extreme. We have other lakes to survey. We have other invasives that are in the state. We have other things to worry about. So with satellite imagery, it is free and frequent. We get new satellite images that are free every 3 days, every 14 days. So you can go in and use this imagery, perform analysis, and basically figure out where the plants are. So this is just a map of part of the Connecticut River. B is where there's no hydrilla, A is where there is hydrilla, and then we did a normalized vegetation index, and basically green means there's healthy vegetation, so these are all the forests outside of the river, and then red means that there's either no vegetation or sick vegetation. And we're able to see that when hydrilla is present, the NDVI values are higher, and they're even higher in September when it comes to the surface and looks like this image. And so with that, I can perform analysis and track the invasive plants with satellite imagery so that we don't have to go into the field all of the time. But that is all I have, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Summer. We do have a few questions. The first one is, what does the Bad Elf device do?
Yeah, so the Bad Elf device, let me see if I can pull up that picture again. So this Bad Elf is this little thing here. It's pretty much the size of my hand, and basically it connects to satellite and gives us our GPS units. So we can get our latitude and longitude from this device as we're collecting our data points. So it's more accurate, more reliable than like using your phone, because we can get within centimeter accuracy, and it is more reliable, where cell service may lack.
Awesome. And second question, how did you map aquatic plants if the water was really turbid?
So if the water is really turbid, we rely very heavily on our other tools. Besides just our visuals. So we will use these rakes and grapples. So basically we rely on the sonar. So the sonar is going to send back radio frequencies, and it'll show us where there are plants. If there's no plants, it's just a flat line. And then you'll see these bumps where the plants are. And then we will throw a grapple or use our rake, depending on the depth, and pull up the plants and see what they are. And if we don't have a sonar, or if we find the sonar is not reliable, we'll just do systematic rake tosses and grapple tosses just to see what's there.
Okay, awesome. And one last question, does the application and/or data, can it be found for Canada?
That's a great question. I'm sure there are resources for Canada. I'm sort of here to sort of show what we do as our little state in Connecticut, and hopefully it grows and more people are using GIS and creating these interactive systems. But it's a really great tool that I hope more people use and interact with.
Thank you, Summer. If anyone has additional questions for Summer, we will be sharing the speaker's email from today's session. And thank you, Summer. We'll move on to our next talk. So next up, we have Rob McGowan from the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters and Mary Gunning from Quinte Conservation, co-presenting on water soldier.
Hello. Randy is supposed to be coming, but he's having a bit of technical issues. So I think that just in the interest of time, I think Mary and I can handle this. So I'll do my best on Randy's portion of the presentation. So my name's Robert McGowan. I work with the Invading Species Awareness Program. I'm the project specialist, and this is Mary Gunning. I'll let you introduce yourself, Mary.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Gunning. I work at Quinte Conservation. I'm the Aquatic Science Manager.
Okay. Thanks, Mary. Today we're just going to be talking about the collective efforts that we have been undertaking for Water Soldier and how we're working collaboratively to do that, to be successful. Mary, if you want to go to the next slide. So with the Water Soldier Working Group, we've been formed since 2012, 2013, and we've had a integrated management plan drafted up. And some of those objectives on those plans are to prevent the introduction and spread of water soldier to new locations in Ontario, implement early detection and rapid response action to local and eradicate new water soldier populations in Ontario, eradicate established water soldier populations from public waters in Ontario, and work with private sector to identify and eradicate water soldier from private waters in Ontario. So this IMP is currently undergoing some reviews, and there will be a new version coming out soon. So it may look a little different than this right now. Options we have under the integrated management plan for management are herbicide, manual removal, mechanical harvesting, diver assisted suction harvesting, and bottom barriers. And we've pilot controlled most of those except for the diver assisted suction harvesting. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Mary. So September 2015, classic picture. Poor guy's not going to get his boat out of there. This was at like almost the peak of the infestation on Trans Summer Waterway. We were having over 170, 180 hectares of water soldier. And September 2015 is the first year we had a tool registered, diquat dibromide reward, to help us battle this infestation. We can go to the next slide. So for the treatment, we use diquat dibromide, 2 airboats and crews, and 1 skiff. Usually do it in October, assuming most of our native plants have gone dormant. So we're really targeting the invasive water soldier and getting our best bang for our buck. It's a surface and subsurface treatment, so they do a direct injection as well. And in 2017, we saw reductions of 85 to 90% with the multi-year herbicide treatments. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So as you can see here, 2015, this is the same bay we were looking at, that man in the boat. Not all the water soldiers gone, but this is navigable waterway now, and that's kind of one of the main purposes of controlling water soldier on the Trent Severn waterway. We want to eradicate it, but it's proving difficult. But we have results like this. If we keep moving, we're hoping to see other success like this. And I'll just go to the next one. So you can see here, this is 2017, and it's a bit of a timeline. It's moving. 2018, you see 2019, and here's 2020. So in 2021 and 2022, it's a pretty cool map, actually. I didn't know this was going to come up. So moving on, can I go to the next slide, please? So here we have 2023. You can see some of these persistent areas, especially in the upper areas. So we kind of adapted a bit. If we can move to the next slide, please, Mary. We've adapted a bit our management. So some of these persistent areas are still getting herbicide, but some of these patches are small and herbicide's really not effective on it. So if we want to go to the next slide, please. Sorry, Mary. We're adapting to, we're calling it see it, pull it, picking up crumbs, getting in there and manually removing these small populations that aren't receptive to our herbicides. And as you can see, we've taken away leaf bags full. I'm not sure if Randy had any specific numbers he was going to give, but that's a lot of water soldier. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So successes. We have knocked the plant down in many areas. The public in these areas have seen a difference, and there's no navigation issues. And the collaborative effort is the working group itself. We all work together to, oh, sorry, can you go to the next slide, please, Mary? We all work together to address water soldier and try to eradicate it and prevent its introduction and spread in Ontario. We're also working with the cottage owners now and residents, and we have a campaign coming out this year that's See It, Pull It. So we're encouraging landowners to get out there and help us manage this a bit, because it's a bit overwhelming at times. So next slide, please. So some challenges. Water soldier is still in the Trent Severn waterway. And we're working on it. We're still treating and managing it. The size of the Trent Severn waterway infested area is getting smaller, this is great news. We're still working on the Bay of Quinte, Lake Ontario, and St. Lawrence River. We have water soldier in Lake Simcoe as of the summer of 2024. We're still treating these persistent areas. We're just coming at it in a multi-pronged approach where we're using herbicide and hand pulling. We still need research on ecological impact, and funding. Funding is always an issue, I think, with everybody. It's been a little variable, but we're working on securing funds and moving forward. So that's kind of the Trent Severn portion of the presentation. So now I'm delivering the portion on Red Horse Lake. So Red Horse Lake is a lake that's just north of Gananoque, Ontario. It resides beside Charleston Lake Provincial Park. And in August of 2020, we got a phone call on the hotline that was reporting water soldier. We went there, confirmed it, and since then we've been managing it. This year we partnered with Quinte Conservation and Cataraqui Conservation to have water soldier crews out there doing monitoring, and they've done some great work. So Nick and I have made a plan, and we did surveillance on Charleston Lake, Singleton Lake, Lyndhurst Lake, Lower Beverly Lake, and Killenbeck Lake, which all surrounds Red Horse Lake. 252 kilometers of shoreline were surveyed, and no water soldier was found in the adjacent lakes to Red Horse Lake. Next slide, please. So with the surveillance, we've done formal monitoring, and we 400 point intercepts on Red Horse Lake. And the result of that, next slide, please. We found 8 distinct populations. All populations were removed. We removed 1,905 kilograms of biomass and additional plants in October that a cottager reported to us. Next slide, please. Education outreach. Nick and crew went to the Charleston Lake Cottage Association to their AGM and presented on water soldier and why it's an issue for them to about 60 members. Multiple signs were installed in around Red Horse Lake and Charleston Lake, and the crew engaged with cottagers, and they built a rapport with the cottagers over the summer. Next slide, please. So moving forward, next steps in 2025, we'll be doing surveillance. We'll be doing surveillance on the west arm of Red Horse Lake, Gananoque Lake, Gananoque River, and the mouth of the Gananoque in the St. Lawrence. We will be doing our formal monitoring as well, those 400 point intercepts. And management, if populations are the same as the previous year, we're going to try to do the hand pulling again. If we go back and we find that we have large, dense populations, we'll investigate what the herbicide application looks like. And next slide, please. And then, as I said previously, Lake Simcoe, water soldier first found in July 2024. We thought we'd kind of have our annual water soldier watch day there, paddle with a purpose, on Saturday, September 14th. We had 8 volunteers participate, and we found some new plants in the canals adjacent to Lake Drive South. We're looking at building partnerships this year to get a crew out there and kind of see what we're dealing with and monitor and perform surveillance to gauge how bad the problem is. And next slide, please. And just last slide, private ponds in Ontario. 3 private ponds were reported this year. Blackwater Golf Course in Georgina off of Highway 48. We can't find who, or I know who owns the property, just can't get in contact with them. We also got another report to the hotline in October 2024 about a sterling pond. We were able to turn around and treat that with herbicide on November 1st, 2024. And then I got a call on October 28th about a Halton pond out near Mississauga and Brampton. And we weren't able to treat that because it was too late in the season. But we look forward to addressing that pond in the spring. Mary, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Thank you. Okay, so the Bay of Quinte is downstream of the Trent River, and it is directly connected to both the Trent River and Lake Ontario. So therefore, it will have a constant source of water soldier populations. The water soldier work follows the same integrated management plan as Parks Canada and OFAH. The 2024 season had an increase of resources and a multi-team approach with other organizations, including the Invasive Species Center and OFAH. So monitoring by OFAH and Quinte Conservation targeted priority areas that were identified in 2024 through various indicators such as previous populations, monitoring work that had been done, eDNA sampling, public reports, and utilizing existing data such as water flow to determine priority areas. Monitoring was in part guided by the eDNA detections. So in 2024, Quinte Conservation collected 144 eDNA samples. Staff working on the Bay of Quinte water soldiers still need to review those 2024 results with the laboratory, so we will be doing that hopefully in the near future. In addition, the OFAH HIT squad performed a great deal of outreach for the Bay of Quinte. This displayed map outlines the 2024 monitoring surveys. Those areas are in purple. There was a total of 30 map areas surveyed according to our water soldier surveillance protocol point intercept method, which covered about 550 hectares. There was a total of 48 days spent surveying between both OFAH and Quinte Conservation staff. The days for monitoring can be few and far between because monitoring must be performed in ideal conditions that allow for observations of the aquatic plant, such as low winds and low wave action, no rain and low turbidity. In the fall, prior to treatment and management practices, we were faced with some time constraints for organizing management. QC staff continued surveying, but we ended up using a visual method, just trying to get everything mapped before management took place. So those indicate the green areas on the map. This is due to the late emergence of water soldier in the Bay of Quinte, and because of that, treatment maps for 2024 were unable to be prepared for in the summer, so we switched to that visual survey method just to try and get as much in as possible. So the Bay of Quinte management follows a similar integrated management method as our partners, using both herbicide and manual techniques. Of the 30 areas surveyed, 20 contained water soldier, and 18 of those were managed. The remaining 2 populations that were not managed was because they were discovered after management took place, and they will be a high priority in 2025. So the total area managed equals 21.37 hectares. So water soldier monitoring on the Bay of Quinte in 2024 found success in the collaborative partnerships. Some of those include OFAH and their HIT squad, Mohawks the Bay of Quinte, Invasive Species Center, Parks Canada, and the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, including other members, municipalities, and organizations of our water soldier working groups, which all helped increase our capacity in the Bay of Quinte. We were able to investigate all external reports that were submitted in late 2023 and 2024, including reportings after management occurred. Furthermore, we investigated areas of the Bay of Quinte where conditions were ideal for water soldier, leading to the discovery of other populations. The challenges for the Bay of Quinte stem from the late emergence of biomass, which occurs in late August and continues into November. For 2024, although it was a successful season, it provided us with limited time to monitor and map 550 hectares in time for appropriate management to occur, which heavily relies on permitting, timing windows, and temperature thresholds. Outreach and education in the Bay of Quinte for water soldier was increased in 2024. During landowner notification in 2023 for treatment, there were very few people who knew of water soldier or what the invasive aquatic plant species was, showcasing a large knowledge gap for our Bay of Quinte community. But in 2024, there was an increase in social media knowledge, including a post that tagged Quinte Conservation of a sighting of water soldier on the bay, indicating knowledge of local residents are increasing. So in 2024, there were 21 events attended with a focus of aquatic invasive species and water soldier, and that includes a specific outreach event specifically for water soldier, which had an increased interest and participation when compared to our 2023 outreach events. So the 2025 monitoring and management will follow the same tiered approach as 2024. Areas are sorted in that priority that we have, with known populations the highest, followed by adjacent areas where previous years that had eDNA detections. The eDNA doesn't indicate those live plants, therefore it could be an indicator of flow or areas that might establish next. Some other wish list areas we'd like to include, which have been investigated in the past, but we'd like to revisit, are the Salmon River area, and some shorelines along the northern edge of Prince Edward County. And thank you, and please feel free to reach out to either Randy, Rob, or myself, and our emails are displayed there.
Thank you, Rob and Mary. It's incredible the amount of work that's been done to manage water soldier. We have 2 questions. One about Procellicore and whether it's toxic for fishes and insects, and then sort of a twofold question, more precisely, what is the DL50?
I'm not a herbicide expert. We did use Procellicore on the bay, did we not, Mary?
Yes, we did. And those went through review of the permitting agencies. So Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks goes over that through their review process, as well as the Department of Fisheries and Oceans do a fish review as well. From my recollection, and again, the same as Rob, I'm not a herbicide expert, but the label does say that it is safe for drinking water. So there's no drinking water restrictions. And my understanding is that it acts similar to a plant hormone. So it just expedites the growth of the individual plant. But again, not a herbicide expert, and I don't know what the LD50 is offhand.
Okay, thank you. The next question, a bit of an easier one. Could you give a brief overview of the biology/origins of water soldier for those of us unfamiliar with it?
Sure. So water soldier is native to Northwest Asia and Siberia, parts of Russia. It first arrived here through the aquarium trade. First detection in North America was in the Trent Severn Waterway in 2008. It is a pretty nasty plant. It has two forms. It has a submergent and emergent form. So basically what happens in the spring and summer months, it gains gases in its leaves, and which makes it buoyant, and it floats to the top and breaches the water's surface. And then it spends its summer in that form, the emergent form. And then in the fall, all those outer leaves lose their photosynthetic gas and they die off, and it sinks the plant to the substrate. Water soldier is an evergreen, so it never really goes dormant like our native plants. So it has a huge advantage over our native plants, that it can start to, as soon as that, well, snow covered like we had this year, probably not photosynthesizing too much, but as soon as that ice is off and the snow is gone, it starts photosynthesizing, starts to grow, right? So I hope that gives you a bit of background. You can email me. I can send you some links where you can learn more about water soldier for sure.
Okay, thank you both so much for that great presentation. We're going to move on now to a different plant, European
Thanks, guys.
water chestnut. And Katie Church, ISC's very own, will be presenting on that. So Katie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sid. I'm going to share my screen here. If you could let me know that you see it in presentation mode. I just can't see the screen, so I need to.
Okay, I don't see your presentation yet. I just see you. So you might be on the other screen.
Okay, 1 second. Let me try this again.
Okay, I see something's loading. Okay, I can see.
And then I'm going to hopefully put it in presentation mode. Can you see that?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Oop, I just have a cursor here that I need to move. Okay. So thanks, Sid. My name is Katie Church. I'm the European Water Chestnut field team lead for the Invasive Species Center. If you tuned in last year, this will be kind of an update with updated data from the 2024 field season. But today I will be talking about European water chestnut rapid response on the Welland River in Welland, Ontario. So just a little bit of an overview. I'm going to go through biology, identification, impacts. I'm going to talk about where it is in Ontario, and then the rapid response we're doing on in Welland, and then what's next for EWC in Welland. So European water chestnut, I'm going to call it either European water chestnut, EWC, or water chestnut. It has many names. It's an invasive aquatic plant. It's an annual plant that grows in slow-moving streams, rivers, and lakes. It prefers, a sandy, silty, clayey sediment. It doesn't really like a rocky bottom for the seeds to stick into the substrate. It was brought here as an ornamental water garden plant to North America, and it's actually native to Europe, Asia, and Africa. These are rosettes that you see here. These are single rosettes. These can form into clusters, I like to say, which eventually forms into dense floating mats. Each rosette can actually produce 15 to 20 seeds. These are the green fleshy seeds you see here. And actually each seed can produce 10 to 15 rosettes. So when you're thinking of long-term, just leaving it, the impacts that this can have and the growth and population size can be quite a bit. The petioles, which are right under here, they have these green spongy pockets, which allow the rooted plants and uprooted plants to float. So if a big wave comes in or a boat goes by with their wake, these plants can snap off. If they have the seeds, they can snap off, float downriver, and establish somewhere else. And these green seeds are actually viable for up to 12 years. In terms of the identification, it can grow up to 2 meters long. It has these really shiny green leaves that's kind of fan-shaped. The green shiny color doesn't really have the same green color as the native aquatic vegetation. It also really doesn't look like anything else we have here. So it doesn't look like, the native lily pads. It's very distinct. And like I said, it grows into these clusters. So these are an example of the clusters that will eventually form into those dense mats, which I'll show you in the next slide. These hardwoody seeds, so these are seeds that have already grown the plant and they're empty, and these guys are very sharp and barbed and woody, and they can float. I've picked up many floating seeds, and these seeds can, wash up on sandy beaches, and it would not be fun to step on. And just to note again, if you're seeing it in a river, sporadically has spread throughout, commonly it's probably because it snapped off and has been able to establish elsewhere. In terms of it being an invasive aquatic, it kind of checks all the boxes. Economic impacts that can decrease property values and impact commercial fishing. I wouldn't want to swim through or boat through something like this, and the seeds are very painful. Those are the social impacts. Ecological impacts, it kills native vegetation and reduces oxygen levels. There's not really like getting through this mat. This is actually taken at Voyager Provincial Park. So it can also impact fish populations and species at risk habitat. So in Ontario, we actually have, it looks quite a bit red here. You can see it was actually established in the States and then moved up into Quebec and then down into Eastern Ontario, most notably in the Wolfe Island and Voyager Provincial Park area. Just want to note on the slide, it does look like a lot of red and it's kind of scary, but all these reports on EDMAPs are under active management. And you can see here, this is the area we're talking about in Welland, right between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, close to Niagara Falls. So it is a prohibited species in Ontario. That just means it's illegal to import, possess, release, grow, sell, lease or trade. It also means that anyone boating in infested waters must avoid spreading the plants. And if they do have the plants on their boat, clean, drain, dry, dispose of the plant so they won't end up back in the water. It also means working with the plant. We must abide by the prevention and response plan set out by the Ministry of Natural Resources. And this basically just details the authorized personnel who can work with the plant, activities while working with the plant, so proper disposal and proper transportation, and conditions such as clean equipment protocols. So this document is actually used every day in our training and in our everyday field work. So now I will get into EWC rapid response in Welland. I'll just go over kind of where we started at and where we are now. So in 2020, a report was made by a recreational paddler on the Welland River They reported this plant to EdMaps. And, this plant doesn't really look like any of our native aquatic vegetation. So good on that paddler for reporting it. It was quickly determined to be European water chestnut. And in 2021, the ISC did a delimitation survey just to see the population size on the river. And it was actually determined that this population could be eradicated through manual removal with a rapid response program. So in 2022, the Invasive Species Center, in partnership with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, developed an eradication program with support from Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. They provided us with their hit squad, with a hit squad team, and Ducks Unlimited provided us with expertise in EWC control in Wolf Island. And it's just important to note, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but the visual surveys and manual removal occur in July and August. And shout out to our partners. It would not be possible to do this program without them. They've been such a great help, and it really has seen success because of the collaborations and the local collaborations we've made. And it just continues to build onto that. So a little bit about the Welland River and kind of the hydrology of it. We're looking at the Welland River right here. This is, we've gotten it up to a 67-kilometer stretch of monitoring. So that's from here in the Niagara River, like where the mouth is, to this fork here. The Welland River actually runs west to east towards the Niagara River and under the Welland Canal. So I'll kind of go into this a little bit because it does look a little bit confusing. But this is the Welland Canal here, this big river. And then this is the recreational canal, which is also known as the Old Welland Canal. So the big ships go through here, and then the recreational canal is used by the city of Welland for paddling and swimming. It's a really nice area. And the Welland River actually flows through both of them through a series of aqueducts. So you have an aqueduct right here and an aqueduct right here. And these aqueducts basically bring the water down and over. And you can see here, we've actually found chestnut. These purple spots on the river are where the chestnut was as of 2024. Just to see how resilient the seed is, it's gone under the aqueduct and it has been able to establish on this side. So that's definitely something we look at when we're thinking of, where we monitor and pull first. We obviously don't want to get out to the Niagara River, so that always gets pulled first and that area gets monitored first. In terms of manual removal, we hand pull. So this technique basically pulls the EWC right out of the substrate, pulling the whole plant and hopefully preventing snapping. If we do end up snapping a plant, we actually drop a GPS point to come back to it later in the season or for next year, so we know. And as you can see here, we do paddle with a purpose every year. We bring some recreational paddlers out and they get to learn how to identify water chestnut, how to report it, and they actually get to pull, which is awesome. And there's a photo of Sydney who actually came down last summer and got to pull. It requires a lot of stability in a canoe, and we actually got some stand-up paddle boarders last summer, so that's amazing. And I just want to point out, in terms of snapping, the Welland River isn't very forgiving. It's more of a dark brown color. So when you do snap a plant, it's very hard to see the plant that you did snap. So that's why it's important to pull that plant, and if it does snap, to drop that point to make sure we go back to it. And it's also important to pull the plant in the July-August timeframe because we want to pull the plant before the seeds drop. Now, in 2024, we actually got a new detection of EWC on Oswego Creek, which is a river, a tributary that flows into the Welland River. Google Map calls it the Welland River. The locals call it Oswego Creek, so I'm going to call it Oswego Creek because it looks very different from the Welland River. It's a lot smaller, a lot windier, and it has a lot more fallen trees and obstacles in this part of the river. So this chestnut was actually found 25 kilometers from the known population on the Welland River, so it's quite far. And the location had its challenges, which I'll kind of show you in the next couple slides. But in terms of one of the challenges, it's in a very secluded area that's surrounded by farm fields. So it's very hard to get to this section of river. It's not a straight paddle from this fork here. We've gotten monitored up to this fork. And then obviously this is 10 kilometers from the fork that we've monitored to. So it's not a straight paddle. You can see Google Maps kind of does a good job at representing how the water kind of thins out. We did get to this population late in the summer, so late August. So there was parts of the river that were dried up, and there was a lot of wading through the water at that point. So landowner outreach was key in this area. And we had a lot of people really take interest in this. And then we also had some people that weren't super interested. And we actually had the opportunity to use someone's piece of land to launch the canoe. So this here is a launch spot. It's on someone's farm field, and they were nice enough to let us launch and, park on the field because it's really hard. It was really hard to get to that area. So just in terms of these plants compared to the original population, this is the original population we're seeing here. This is the 200 plants we pulled from the original population, the known population of chestnut on the river. And this is where the new detection was found. And if you can even see, this photo does a really good representation of how it thins out in this area. So I like to call this a satellite population because we didn't find any chestnut between, that 25-kilometer stretch. In this area alone, we pulled out 1,167 plants. And, in terms of continued monitoring and management, the ISC will continue to monitor a larger stretch and detection will be prioritized to continue this to eradication. And here are just some photos. This is a great before and after control photo. The rosettes are a lot larger as we got there later in the season. So the biomass was obviously a lot larger. These are some challenges, as you can see. This is a photo of Katie in both of these photos. This was kind of what we were working with in terms of challenges of accessing. It was a lot of portaging and a lot of wading through the water and climbing over these. This was definitely something we couldn't portage over. So finding other ways to get to the river, again, a big challenge. And then this is just a great example of the biomass. This is about 2 days worth of biomass. Like I said, the plants were a lot larger because we were later in the season. So yeah, that's about 2 days worth of biomass. And in terms of the original population, this is mapping data from 2022 to 2024. I'm going to go over this quick because I see I'm like almost at time. But just a massive reduction in these sections. You can see here, we started off with polygons and then we moved to individual plants. So this one section alone, section 1 here, had 400 to 800 plants. In 2023, there was 69 plants, and then in 2024, 27 plants. So a very large reduction. And that's what we were seeing in the original population that was recorded. This is just a great visual to show you kind of what we started from to where we are now. 7,000 plants were pulled the first year. We have, over an 80% reduction with 900 plants. And then this year, 200 plants from the original population. And obviously I have to add the satellite population because that's important data to keep as well. So it'll be interesting to see what this satellite population looks like as we will get to it early next year. So what's next? You know, the rapid response has proven to be successful, especially in that original population. The populations have decreased immensely. So we are going to extend monitoring efforts and prioritize control of the new detection. You know, continue to remove the original population and the new detection as well. Again, survey and monitoring the known extent and survey surrounding water bodies. And as always, increase community and conservation authority involvement through outreach, like paddling events. And yeah, that is it. I think I'm good on time, Sid.
Thank you, Katie. You got a couple of questions. One is, how do you dispose of the plants once you've removed them?
So the biomass goes into Rubbermaid containers and they get disposed of far away from any water body. We work outside of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority property called Chippewa Creek Conservation. They have a green waste pile that's really far away from anything, and we basically transport the bins there and dump the bins into that green waste pile.
Awesome. And then another question is, have you tried seed control? I've read about divers removing seeds at the bottom of the water body since they can stay dormant for a long time.
That would be really cool. We haven't tried that, but that would be a really cool thing. It would be interesting to see how that would work on the Welland River, just because of how turbid it is, and I call it the chocolate milk river because it's so brown. So that would be a really cool thing to do.
It's very chocolate milk in color, that's for sure. And then one last question. How do you think the water chestnut arrived at your new detection site? Do you have any ideas?
I think it's been there and we didn't know about it. I think it has either gotten there from a bird flying and the seed attaching, or it was dumped as an ornamental garden plant, but I'm not sure. I'm going to give those two as the option.
That's great. Thank you so much, Katie. That was a great presentation and a really nice success story for early detection and manual removal.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, we're going to go to our last speaker for the session, Kevin Money from Essex Region Conservation Authority, who's going to talk to us about managing hydrilla.
Okay, can everybody see my presentation?
Yes, looks good, Kevin.
All right, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining and being interested in this. And thank you for the invitation to participate in this forum. I think is very important. I just wanted to start off by acknowledging Francine McDonald, who is and Stephen Markovitz, who were unable to join me for this presentation today. It should have been a joint presentation, but unfortunately, due to the due to the election, they're not able to participate in this. So I'm doing this solo. So just so people are aware of that. Today I'm here to talk to you about something called hydrilla. Hydrilla is a new invasive plant to Canada. I'm going to give some background and then talk about the rapid response that was rolled out this past summer. It was first reported and detected in June of 2024 at Hillman Marsh Conservation Area. Dr. Rebecca Rooney's lab, which operates out of the University of Waterloo, first detected this, and we were notified approximately then that we had a potential issue associated with the new aquatic invasive plant at that time. to put it in context, and I didn't know much about hydrilla at the time. Hydrilla is prohibited under the Ontario Invasive Species Act. It's illegal to possess, deposit, release, transport, etc. It's a highly aquatic, it's a highly aggressive plant. It originates from Asia, most likely from the aquarium trade, and it can grow up to about an inch a day. And what it'll do is form very dense mats that interfere with waterfowl, fish, disrupt drainage, and have really obvious effects on recreation as well. The United States has been dealing with this plant for quite some time now, and they've found it very difficult to deal with and extremely expensive to try to manage and treat. In terms of what hydrilla actually is, so the picture on the left is hydrilla. It has 3 to 8 whorls, sharp teeth on the leaf edges, which is a really easy giveaway for this plant. It does have a little white flower at the right time of year, and it forms tubers in the sediment. The closest looking aquatic plant would be Canada waterweed. And that is a 3-leaf whorl instead of a 3 to 8. And you can't really see any of the teeth on it. So it is fairly distinctive once you actually have seen it. And unfortunately, we have quite a population in Hillman Marsh. This is the really quick timeline associated with the hydrilla rapid response. I'm quite proud of the team of people who came together. So between June 30th, July 2nd, when the first sighting occurred, we were able to initiate a herbicide control by October 17th. So about a 4 to 5 month time frame. Which is really fast, given there was no funding, there was no partnerships, there's no permits in place to do any of this, and there was a lot that had to go on in between. It's something to really highlight, and I think it was a huge team effort on behalf of multiple agencies to really come together, understand the importance of trying to manage this invasive plant, and to initiate some control right away. Confirmation of the actual plant was between July 3rd and July 19th. CFIA did DNA sequencing and confirmed that it was actually hydrilla, just to make sure. Notice went out between the Conservation Authority as well as the Ministry of Natural Resources to various agencies. And the Conservation Authority undertook a process of notifying the public, key stakeholders, First Nations, while the Ministry of Natural Resources undertook the process of identifying all the other stakeholders. Very early on in July, we did and I'll dive into this actually, maybe I'll just switch slides. I'll go into the actual detection and have you understand what actually transpired. So Hillman Marsh Conservation Area is about 1,000 acres in size, and it's a multi-use property. There's education programming there. There's a lot of bird watching. People like to go there to walk their dogs. We also have a controlled waterfowl hunting program. It's right beside Lake Erie, in the western basin of Lake Erie. Within it, we have 2 controlled wetland cells, so diked, hydrologically separate from Lake Erie and the rest of the cell, and we manage that for the betterment of wildlife and the biology of that. In the picture here, you can see what's called the west cell. That is where the hydrilla was detected, and you can see the little dot there. That was the first occurrence of where it was actually found. This site is hydrologically disconnected from everything else. So there's a large dike around it, and we actually pump water in and out of this in order to manage water levels in this west cell as well as our east cell. But ultimately, that was the major benefit associated with finding hydrilla within Hillman Marsh, is that it was actually contained within our west cell. The actual area where it was found, so the west cell is approximately 30 hectares, and that's the open water area where there's actually open water. The rest of it, we have emergent vegetation composed of things like phragmites and cattails and things like that. In the bottom slide, you can actually get a sense of where that 30 hectares actually is, and based on that yellow shaped polygon there. One of the first things that the group needed to do was see if we could find it anywhere else. So there's 6 agencies, including some of our American partners, who actually went out and undertook a fairly significant one-day survey to try to find hydrilla in other places in Hillman Marsh. They were able to create or look for over 150 samples. And fortunately, they were not able to find it outside of this west cell, which was absolutely fabulous. So we knew that it was ultimately contained within the west cell, and we were able to then treat it and manage it within that area. It wasn't out in Lake Erie. It wasn't out into our Hillman Marsh, which was fabulous. So we do have some other areas, and these are the different areas that we actually checked. We also, at the end of that exercise, we needed to go through a fairly extensive decontamination of all the watercraft and equipment that were actually involved in that process, to ensure that we weren't transferring hydrilla, because one of the main vectors of spread for hydrilla is on boats. So hydrilla, a small piece of hydrilla will get on a boat or a prop from an engine. It's moved from point A to point B, and unfortunately, if it gets loose in a new water body, it'll become established in that area. So approximately 30 plus people and 10 agencies got together to do quite a significant amount of work in a very short order of time. So a joint communications plan was developed, including a media release that was released by the Conservation Authority and the Invasive Species Council. So that was done. There was direct communication with IRCA's waterfowl hunting community, and there's a lot of signage that was put up. So the Conservation Authority put up some signage and the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters also made some signage. This particular sign shows the sign that OFAH made and sent to us, and we installed these once we received them. One of the big things that we did right away, based on, and this was through consensus with the hydrilla working group, was close large areas of our publicly accessible Hillman Marsh Conservation Area to the public. So we put up a lot of signs, and we closed our boat ramp. We closed the site to waterfowl hunting within the west cell. We closed it to walking, school programs, etc. We wanted to limit the opportunity for people to spread this hydrilla plant to other parts of our wetland and ultimately into Lake Erie. So that's why it was very important that we took very early, very strong action to undertake this process. And it's still closed to this day. Next steps had to deal with the management and response. We worked with the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Invasive Species Council to then deal with what do we do with this one. We knew it was rampant within our west cell, and we knew it wasn't anywhere else. So how do we then deal with it and treat it? Well, ultimately, it was decided that a herbicide treatment was the best course of action. So we needed to go through a funding and procurement process, and then obtain permits, because we needed to obtain herbicide permits by both MECP and DFO, and before we were able to spread this particular herbicide called Procillacor, which I'll talk about on the next page. We also engaged the University of Waterloo in undertaking surveys to better understand the full extent of the population of hydrilla that's actually there, and come up with some further management options associated with it. And we needed to actually secure the herbicide and pay for it to be applied in our west cell. Pre-treatment, the Waterloo Wetland Laboratory undertook a great deal of work. They created a grid survey and undertook a process of detailing out 60 different plots. They found hydrilla at 37 of them. And the hydrilla populations were very high in some areas. They couldn't find it in other spots, but generally speaking, just from my own general observations, you could find hydrilla pretty much everywhere within the west cell, unfortunately. Other dominant plants that we could find within there that were also found by the Waterloo Wetland Lab include coontail, ducktail, and Canada waterweed. They also took sediment cores to try to better understand how long the population has actually been there, because often you can take a look at the tubers and the growth of the tubers and how many tubers there actually are in the sediment to get an understanding of how long the population of hydrilla was actually there. So that process and counting those tubers in the sediment courses is still underway. And then finally, on October 17th, we're able to use something called Procillacor FX herbicide, applied by a US-based applicator, actually. We treated the entire wetland, all 30 hectares. We ultimately, in the pictures, you can actually see an airboat. It was actually applied using an airboat that went through the entire property. The picture on the left shows the rear of the airboat, and you can see 4 tubes hanging down, and that's where the actual herbicide came out of. So they had pumps and tanks on the actual airboat, and they had a grid that they followed to apply the herbicide in a very systematic way throughout the entire area. Also noting that permits and authorizations were required in order to undertake this process. And again, hats off to all the regulatory agencies for approving this quickly to help us facilitate this. There's definitely an urgency to move this forward so we could do an initial treatment and as a first step to try to control hydrilla within this area. And all of the various agencies understood that and made this a priority. So it was a great team effort. In terms of next steps, the hydrilla team is already working towards a longer term management plan. We've already had at least 1 or 2 meetings, and we're in the process of securing some of those long-term permits so we can undertake additional herbicide treatments in 2025. Ultimately, we need to find and secure multi-year funding in order to proceed with the application of this herbicide. It is extremely expensive. There is only one herbicide that can treat hydrilla, unfortunately, and there's only one manufacturer. So the cost is unfortunately quite high associated with this particular herbicide. We are exploring opportunities related to water level manipulation as a form of partial control as well. There's a lot of thought that needs to be given associated with that, mainly because what do we do with the water and how do we remove the water from the west cell of Hillman Marsh? And then we also have to continue working with the Waterloo Wetlands Lab to deal with monitoring and efficacy of the treatments that we do want to undertake. We do want to do, further to that, we do want to expand outside of Hillman Marsh, and I think all the partners agree that we need to start looking further afield for hydrilla. So places like obvious places like, for instance, marinas, municipal marinas along the shore of Lake Erie, places like that. We are going to be working together to try to find and see if there are detections of hydrilla in other spots within Windsor-Essex County. And then another very key thing that we've spent a lot of time actually talking about is a communications plan. So we need to communicate with the waterfowlers. We need to communicate with marina operators. We need to communicate with the boating community to ensure that they have heightened awareness of hydrilla. Hydrilla is not a thing that has ever occurred here in Canada. So it's probably not on the minds of the boating community, but we have to make it a priority and make sure people are aware of it, and that they're aware of the requirements associated with properly cleaning your boat before you move it between bodies of water, as one quick example. So those things are all ongoing, and this process is definitely not over. This is going to be a long-term process to try to manage this population of hydrilla in the west cell of Hillman Marsh. We are hoping, and everybody is hoping, that it is contained within the west cell of Hillman Marsh, and we cannot find it anywhere else, and that we can work towards treatment of this invasive plant over the next number of years. I think that is the end of my present. Oh, no, it's not. Obviously, acknowledgements. Sorry. These are the various ministries and organizations that are involved in this. I should also point out that we also had a lot of help from our U.S. counterparts who have been dealing with this plant for years now, and relying on them and their experience as it relates to having an understanding of what the treatment options are and how to actually manage hydrilla. So having said that, I think this is my last slide, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from people.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was amazing just to see all the work that's gone into managing hydrilla and so quickly. We do have a few questions for you that have come in. First one, are there any boat access points into the west cell, even canoe? Any ideas on how hydrilla got there?
At this point, we actually think that hydrilla may have become established or gotten into our west cell of Hillman Marsh probably at least 3 years ago. And the most likely vector, given where the highest density can be found, which is right beside a hunting blind. So we think that it was probably a hunter who brought it in on the bottom of his boat, unfortunately. So that's our best guess. We'll never actually fully know. So
For sure. How did the public react to the area closures, and do you have any insights, anything that you learned from that process?
By and large, we received no negative public feedback associated with the closure. I think we put a lot of information on our website. We communicated with our annual pass holders. We communicated with our hunting community, and everybody understood the importance of what we were doing and why we were doing it. So some well-crafted communication from the communications experts is key, and that way people understand it. And as a result, we really didn't have any negative backlash associated with the closure.
That's amazing. Okay, a couple more. Oh, someone's asking about hydrilla, sorry, found in other areas, and this was the first detection in Canada, so it hasn't been found elsewhere. I'll just answer that one for you. And has there been any consideration to partnering with the Peely Festival of Birds? Hillman is a favorite site at the beginning of.
Yeah. So Parks Canada is on our committee. They were in the acknowledgement slide at the end. They're very aware of it. And I think they are probably going to be checking their own wetland this year. And Parks Canada is part of the communications process that we're unfolding. So they may be communicating directly with their visitorship as well.
Amazing. Okay, lots of questions coming in. I'll do one more and then we're going to have to close the session so folks can get to the next one. But there's a question about the communications piece with the public. Was this largely via mail, sign-ins, in-person conversations? What was sort of the main platform?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's probably about at least 15 to 20 closure signs put up all around Hillman Marsh right now, as well as the signs that we highlight from the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. There was media, there's actually fairly good media uptake on this. So there was some media uptake. We put out a press release. It's posted on our website. The Invasive Species Council posted it on their website. I believe the Minister of Natural Resources even provided comments. This was highly publicized, and there was fairly good uptake on it. I think that there's still a lot more work that can be done, though, especially within the kind of those key user groups that actually use boats within our wetlands. So the canoeists, the kayakers, the hunters, those are getting the message out about how to clean your boat properly is probably one of the most important things that we can do at this juncture.
Absolutely. Clean, drain, dry.
Yes.
If anyone has additional questions for Kevin, we have a Google Doc that was just put in the chat with all the speakers' emails from today. But this does conclude the session. So thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. And thank you to our engaged audience. Really appreciate it. And now I invite everyone to move to our next session on Innovative Solutions and Policy Part 1. Thank you.